right, we're gonna talk about this. We're talking about babies crying. And I know this is a very sensitive subject. We're gonna talk about the cycle of baby crying during sleep training and also different reasons why babies cry. We're gonna start with that active sleep training. Let's just say it's night 1 and you're doing a leave and check method. So that means you've gone through your bedtime routine, you've given your baby all the love, cuddles, hugs, kisses, all the things, and you put them in the crib while they're drowsy and awake. Maybe they instantly start crying, but you still walk out of the room and close the door behind you. You're only gonna leave them crying for 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on their age and depending on how you wanna do this. The length of time is not the most important, but the way that your child is crying is something you should pay attention to. Now that first round of crying is generally the protest cry. This is that immediate first few minutes of sleep training where you put the baby down and they immediately cry. They're protesting. This is their way of saying, what the heck are you doing? This isn't how you usually put me to sleep. Get back in here. Expect this. Expect it to happen. It is important that when you hear this protest crying that you don't rush in. The protesting will stop. It may intensify to the peak where your child is at their peak of crying and the crying intensifies. It is harder. It almost seems like they go from 0 to 60 like that. So the crying is going to be more intense, it's going to be stronger, and it's going to be very hard to listen to. This type of cry is generally short term, meaning less than 20 minutes, less than 10 minutes. It really just depends on your child, but it's not going to last forever, and that is just what you need to remind yourself constantly. This is the cry where parents say, my kid is screaming. Yes, they are at their peak. That is the most that they are going to cry during the night. Maybe let's just pretend that this is night 1 of sleep training. Now, if you're doing a leave and check method, let's say for example, you are leaving for 10 minutes. Your child may do the protest cry, it may go to the peak cry, and then to the mantra cry. So let's talk about what the mantra cry is. Now, this kind of cry is less intense than the peak cry. They're kind of starting to calm down. This is when you know that your child is starting to self-soothe. If you're unsure of signs that your child is self-soothing, then check out this video after you watch this one so that you can look for those signs of self-soothing. But during this mantra cry is where they're more or less like starting to calm down. They're letting out cries in between periods of calmness. It might be more of an I'm annoyed cry that you're not coming in here right now, but they're self-soothing, so you don't need to go in there right now. And they are just kind of chilling, letting out some cries. And it's okay, they're doing great. And then comes the falling asleep cry. Now I know that this can be a little bit heartbreaking, but when your child is actually falling asleep into a light sleep before they get into that deep sleep, they may let out some extra cries. And it really is just residual crying from the crying that they were doing before. And they are just kind of letting out that little last protest. Now it's obviously going to be different than the protest cry, but it's going to be a more drawn out little I really should not sample these types of cries for you, but it is going to be more of a whiny, longer, drawn out little whine, and then they will fall asleep, so don't rush in. When you hear them be quiet after letting out that cry, just step back and give them a moment because chances are they have fallen asleep. So you see how the process went up and down. So now we should talk about what happens when you do go in the room. Now let's say for example that you're only going in the room every 5 minutes, okay? So maybe they protest and then they peak, and during that peak is your 5-minute interval and you go in the room. You calm them down and you soothe them. You're back here again, okay? So then you're back at the protest cry, and then they might peak, and then if you go in, then they're gonna go back down. So they may peak, and then maybe they get to the mantra, and then maybe you go in because they're still crying. Back at square one. So you're gonna start here again, and then up and down. So it is not a linear process. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to be more of a wave. It's a wave and it's a cycle. Now every time you go in, you're starting over, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm not saying don't go in. I'm just saying to expect that they're gonna start back at the protest, and then they're gonna peak again, and then they're going to mantra, and then they're gonna chill out and go to sleep. So expect that all to happen. Now that is generally the cycle of the crying that your child may have when you're sleep training, but what about when you're not sleep training and you just don't know what each cry means? Now when my kids were babies, I definitely did not know the difference between, oh, that's a hunger cry, oh, that's an I need you cry. I had no idea. I thought it all sounded the same. It was just like crying is crying is crying is crying. So they need something. But there's a little bit of differentiation between different types of crying. If your child is overstimulated or overtired, they're going to have a really drawn out, whiny cry. They should have gone to bed a long time ago. Not a long time ago, but maybe like 20 to 30 minutes ago. Now your child may also have a hunger cry, which is going to be more short and rhythmic crying, and you will definitely know that your child is hungry because they are rooting and they are looking for their food. If your child is uncomfortable, then they're going to have longer cry sessions. They may be squirming around and just trying to get comfortable. Of course, there's that colicky cry that just does not quit. It will be very consistent for a long amount of time, and there's really nothing that you can do about it, and you may feel like everything you're doing to comfort your baby is not working. That is when you may want to talk to the pediatrician about possibly having colic issues. Now, with all of this information being given about the different types of cries, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I could definitely dive into more types of cries, but those are the most common. But it's really important to know your baby's proper wake windows at each age. This is important because you can avoid a lot of that overstimulation crying, overtired crying, or just discomfort crying because they may be overtired, overstimulated, all the things that contribute to their sleep. If you're unsure of what your baby's wake windows should be, I have a chart of wake windows in my free baby sleep guide that you can get in the description box down below, so make sure you grab that ASAP. Not only will you get access to my baby wake time chart, but you will also get 5 steps to improving your baby's sleep without sleep training. Remember that every baby is unique and every baby will be on a different sleep journey. And regardless of how your baby cries or how much they cry, just remember that you are the best parent for your child, and they are doing great and you are doing great. And as long as you are loving that baby and giving them all of their needs, which I know you are doing, then everything will be fine. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and keep blooming. Mwah.